Now we're ready to begin. And the first presenters are with the Civil Enforcement Initiative of New York City. And we are welcoming to the podium Robert Messner, who is Managing Attorney of Civil Enforcement for the New York City Police Department, and Richard Saita, Deputy Inspector of the New York City Police Department. And please feel free to correct my pronunciation if I got it wrong. Fine, thank you. You may proceed.
Ready? Thank you. I'm Rob Messner. I'm the Managing Attorney of the Civil Enforcement Section. Rich Seat is the Commanding Officer of the Midtown South Precinct, the world's busiest precinct. We're here today to talk about the Civil Enforcement Initiative. Civil enforcement is a concept, adding lawyers into a police department's response to community problems, adding lawyers into the law enforcement process early on, not after an arrest, not before a grand jury presentation, not as critics of the police conduct, but rather as partners with the police, as consultants to individual police officers and police commanders like Rich. The lawyers in our program have attorney-client relationships of trust with the police commanders, the police officers, and the community. The community and the officers see the same lawyers. They go to events with these people, they see them in court, they build up a relationship of trust and a belief that this person is on their side and dedicated to their needs. We've dealt with a tremendous number of problems. I mean, it's New York City. We've got a lot of different types of crimes. We've dealt with prostitution. We've dealt with narcotic sales. We've dealt with illegal gambling, auto crime, including chop shops, unlawful noise, including boombox cars, loud clubs, and motorcycles, sale of illegal weapons, sale of narcotics paraphernalia, illegal social clubs, sale of alcohol to minors, drag racing and cruising on public streets. We've done a lot. We've done it in a lot of different types of areas. New York City is very diverse. You have areas that are inner city, rife with crime. You've got areas that could be the suburbs of any city in America. We've been in all of them. We've addressed these problems in all of them. So here I am, I'm the lead-off person for 30 great programs, and I want you to remember this program. When you look back, so I'm going to tell you exactly how I want you to remember it. I want you to remember the number 14. That's what I want you to remember. Remember the number 14. Because since civil enforcement started in 1991 as part of then Police Commissioner Lee Brown's community policing efforts in New York, 14 times our lawyers working with police commanders have come up with innovative strategies to address community crime problems, strategies that were never used anyplace else. They created them, they put them into place, and they replicated them in various precincts. They modified them where necessary, and they made a difference. Let me give you a quick example. When we first started out in '91, we started up in the Bronx, and the community there was very concerned about street prostitution in the sort of the main drag there on Fordham Road. So the precinct had arrested the prostitutes and arrested them, never drove them away. We came up with a strategy called Operation Losing Proposition. That's one of the 14. The Johns, instead of the prostitutes, were arrested. And then we forfeited the cars that the Johns were using to have sex with the prostitutes. If a John drove his own car there, so in other words, he's putting his car into jeopardy by using it to commit this crime, we would forfeit it, and we would bring a forfeiture action and bring him into state court in a civil action to forfeit that car. Once we started that, prostitution plummeted. Demand for street prostitutes dried up. No one was willing to risk going through a civil court case, civil forfeiture case for their car to commit this crime. Now, I'm not saying we eliminated prostitution in the city of New York, but what I am saying is we controlled it, we moved it, and we showed the community that we could make a difference. I wish that I could take you to our offices, and that's where you'd find out what this program's about. Because we moved into new offices recently, and you know, they're city offices, they're not very lavish, and there's no budget for decorating, so everybody decorates their own. And you go into most city offices and the lawyers have their degrees up on the wall, or if they're artsy, they have an art print up on the wall. my lawyers started decorating their offices with pictures of the crack houses that the judges had ordered closed. Crack houses shuttered with big locks on them with big signs, closed by court order, and they were getting pictures of them and hanging them on their walls. And one day I was in one of the offices and one of the young attorneys came in and he had a bunch of them up on his wall of different ones he'd done, and he had another one in his hand he wanted to tack up on the wall, and he looked around and his wall was full. And he walked over and he took down his college diploma and he tacked that picture of that crack house, that closed crack house up there. I don't think I can say anything more than that.
Perfect timing. Now we have 5 minutes for questions of our two program representatives. Who in the committee would like to start? Max?
You mentioned the attorney-client relationship. Would you explain that, because you could all very easily become part of the team?
Well, my attorneys are assigned geographically to an area. Now, I don't have enough attorneys. There are 76 precincts in New York, so I don't have enough attorneys to assign one attorney to each precinct, which might be the ideal. But what I am able to do is I'm able to assign an attorney to about 3 precincts. Each precinct, every attorney in the office has an area of responsibility and is responsible for knowing the people in that precinct and the community and the area, their market share, if you will. In other words, what their crime problems are, what the reoccurring patterns are, what the demographics, everything. They're responsible, and they become a member of the team.
Mayor Hatcher.
Have you experienced any due process problems? You mentioned the impoundment of cars. How do you address that in the program?
We've been very lucky. Well, I don't want to say lucky. We've been successful because we are very cautious. Another reason that we've been successful is our goal has never been to use things like forfeiture or seizure or nuisance abatement as a money-making tool. We're using it to address a crime problem. So we don't get, one of the reasons that we haven't gotten into trouble is we easily resist the urge that some government attorneys have to milk every last dollar out of a case. When we close a drug spot, I don't want to keep it closed and have the landlord pay me fines. What I want to do is get a legitimate business back in that place as quickly as possible. Let it reopen. Get a legit business in there. That's going to provide jobs to the community. That's going to get the landlord tax money back. So, yeah, we deal in controversial areas. Forfeiture is very controversial. We're waiting on the Supreme Court in Austin and Alexander, big cases. But we're very careful with our practice, and we never lose sight of the fact that we're not there to punish people. We're trying to address community problems.
Congressman?
I have two quick questions. One, do you use any paralegals to expand your reach, number one? Number two, I think you addressed part of the question. You said that once the crack houses have been closed, you seek to do other things with it. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Okay, the first question, yes. Unfortunately, it's hard to get paralegals because of what government pays them against what private industry pays. I'm very lucky to have 2 civilian paralegals on my staff. I'm also even luckier to have, they're the only 2 in the department, I might add. I'm also even luckier to have 3 police officers who are paralegals on my staff. Now, the sad thing is they're all wonderful, but because of the dichotomy and the difference in pay, my civilians earn about half of what my police officers earn. We are, to answer the second part of your question, we do not like, although we have the power to secure closing orders under the New York City Code for up to a year, we do not like to leave buildings that were crack houses or houses of prostitution vacant for any length of time because it's hard to keep the criminals out. What we prefer to do is immediately work with the landlord to identify a legitimate tenant and get them into that space. And we've had a tremendous amount of luck with getting legitimate businesses, sneaker shops, clothing stores, grocery stores into that space.
Just follow up on that. How do you do that? Do people come to the police precinct? Do you go out and look for them?
No, we actually will tell the landlord. We'll say to the landlord, look, we've got you now. We've got a closing order. You can't get any rent. We could hold you for a year, but we tell you right now, if you find a legitimate tenant with a legitimate business, we'll move to vacate our own closing order.
David?
Could Inspector Sato give us a brief sense of what the police response to this? And in particular, I'm curious about whether this has any application to violent crime.
We found in the New York City Police Department that addressing the quality of life issues has direct impact on violent crime. By paying attention to the small things, the public urination, smoking of marijuana, etc., we've seen our robberies and major crimes, burglaries, decrease. Civil enforcement is a police commander's best friend. He's provided via his attorneys. I have an attorney who sits at my right side. It's Midtown South is a $40 million a year budgeted operation. If I were a CEO, you know I'd have counsel very close to me. He provides very new, innovative approaches with a civil view to attack long-standing criminal problems that have been resistant to traditional law enforcement.